gentlemen, फिर एक बार ट्रम्प सरकार. Exactly what has happened, but a victory that many people were not predicting, a victory that really many people would say is a slap on the face of a lot of that fake narrative that was created. Because Trump this time was not just fighting Kamala Harris. It was Trump versus the Western media. It was Trump versus the likes of Barack Obama. It was Trump versus a lot of illegal immigrants. It was Trump versus a lot of that lobby that did not want him to come back. But now that he's come back, what does this mean? Not just for us here in India. You've seen a great chemistry even otherwise between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump. Prime Minister Modi was one of the first world leaders to congratulate his good friend Donald Trump. But we'll also take this moment, to get you a lot of interesting newsmakers and also analysis on what this victory really means and what should be the biggest talking point on a victory like this. I have Srinjoy, our colleague, joining us on top of this edition of The Breaking Ground. Srinjoy, I do remember having a lot of these conversations with you, and every time you've said that there is an edge that, Trump was beginning to gain and Kamala Harris was beginning to slip. When did this tide turn? Or, did a lot of the Western media, did a lot of this Kamala Harris supporter, they did not realize what is happening on ground zero? Was this disconnect so very clear that you're reflecting in these numbers?
Well, first of all, if you look at 2016 and 2020, all the opinion polls give Donald Trump a percentage. But when the results come out, you find, and it's happened in all three elections, Donald Trump has got more votes than what his supporters have said to the opinion pollsters or the exit pollsters. So there should have been, for Kamala Harris to win, there should have been a comfort zone of about 3-4%.
Yes.
If she'd had a 3-4% lead right up to the elections, particularly in the 7 states, which were swing states, then it would have been clear that she has a lead and she is going to probably win.
Okay, Srinjoy, apologies, I have to jump in right here, but I will ask you to stay with us as I will quickly introduce our group editor-in-chief, Navika Kumar, also into this conversation, and she has a very, very special guest that people really want to hear this evening. Navika.
Thank you very much, Deepthi. And joining me this evening is Robert Cahaly, senior strategist and pollster of Atlanta-based Trafalgar Group, one of the few pollsters who had actually predicted a Trump victory while everybody was calling it neck and neck and too close to call. And, somebody gaining here and Harris leading. Robert Cahaly, even on 5th of November, you were clear 52.1% was Donald Trump and 45.2% were the polls for Kamala Harris. How did you get to that?
Oh, what we did is from the very beginning, and this goes back to 2016, we were like one of the only two who predicted he would win in 2016. And going forward, his voters are a little bit hard to find. In 2016, they were a little shy. They didn't want to be judged for being for Donald Trump. And in 2020, we had the same thing. But by 2024, they were afraid. They were afraid that maybe big tech or the government would target them. They were constantly asking us, who will have this information? Who are you asking this for? What are you going to do with this? And so there was a lot of fear. But what we were able to do was determine in each one of these states that Trump had a margin that was higher than what the others were seeing it. And the ones we were really competing with were the the mainstream media pollsters, the ones from all the big news stations, the networks, the newspapers, the colleges. And once again, for the third election in a row, we left all those guys in the dust because they just don't understand how to poll real people, and they don't see that people, they still believe that people just right on the beginning tell the truth to a pollster, and it's not reasonable. People don't. They're, for whatever reason, you have to cajole them a little bit and give them an assurance of anonymity to actually get the truth out of them.
So let me ask you, the new Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, in his speech has said that this is the greatest political comeback. Do you really think it's so?
I mean, certainly, I can't judge for the history of America, but I can certainly judge for the history of politics that I've been aware of. I mean, certainly Nixon losing the presidency and coming back to get elected president 8 years later was a political comeback. But, it wasn't like he was an incumbent defeated. Being an incumbent who gets defeated has a stigma to it. Add the January 6th, he had a cloud over his head. Then you put all the indictments, and it was just it seemed like an extremely uphill climb, what we would call in the business a very heavy lift, and yet he lifted it. We did see it start to change. The turning point that we noticed was the second assassination attempt. We were actually in the field that weekend with a poll, and the Friday and Saturday numbers were lower for Trump than the Sunday evening numbers after the word of the assassination attempt came out. And so that was just another frustration point where Americans were saying, all right, I've had enough. They've done everything they can to this guy, and I've had enough. Even if I don't like him, I'm sick of what they're doing to him.
So you think this is a sympathy vote for the assassination attempts, or were there other factors that added to that sympathy?
It wasn't a sympathy vote. It's more of like when you characterize someone as Hitler and you demonize him that way, you invite things like the assassination attempt. So it wasn't a sympathy because of the assassination attempt. It was a frustration that the other side had gone so overboard, attacking him and turning him into some kind of a devil that individuals, two individuals in less than 2 months would feel the urge to go shoot him. I mean, that's not as much sympathy as it's outrage.
Okay. But you also said that Trump's strength with Democrats is significant. Pennsylvania, for example, Trump does better with Democrats than Kamala Harris does with Republicans. And finally, Pennsylvania and Georgia actually flipped. Do you think the swing states that were most critical in this elections have swung the Trump way? And which would be the key swing states that you would find responsible for the Trump victory?
Certainly, Georgia and Pennsylvania. There was a lot of concern that North Carolina, which early was very strong for Trump, but some of the areas worst hit by the hurricane were some very strong areas for Trump, and there was a worry that they wouldn't turn out. And there was also an unpopular candidate for governor running. And so North Carolina became a concern. But when, we always thought he would win Georgia and North Carolina, and we felt like it'd be more than just a point or so. We felt like it'd be a little larger margin, and he did. Pennsylvania was always the state because Pennsylvania was probably a place that Joe Biden might have done better because it had so many of those, blue collar working class Democrats who did not dislike Joe Biden. They identified with Joe Biden, but they did not identify with Kamala Harris. They did not identify with the kind of the politics that she represented. And so when Pennsylvania was there, it was only a matter of if Arizona had gone, and it still may very well, but it was only a matter of that was the only state left and it would be a victory. But then it just was, to see Wisconsin and Michigan be there is only adds more fuel to it. But winning the two big ones, Georgia and North Carolina, and then Pennsylvania, was the point when we knew that there was no way he was going to lose.
So let me ask you, in the last election, Trafalgar was one of the most accurate pollsters. How did your group and its polling methodology differ in 2024 elections compared to the previous years? And what adjustments did you have to make to improve the accuracy?
Well, I mean, whether it was 2016 or 2020, we were always in the first or second most accurate. So we didn't have to change a lot. But because the times have changed, that's what our changes relate to. So many more people no longer answer a home line, and so many younger people no longer answer their cell phone from a number they don't recognize. So integrating an effective text message polling system has made a huge difference. And part of that is we don't text the link, but we text each question back and forth. So people feel more comfortable texting back a, letter A or letter B or a name than they do clicking on a suspicious link. And so the fact that we reach out to people with their text, email, live call, whatever it takes in a way that they're most comfortable with, we get a larger participation. We also do a bigger sample size, always 1,000 per state, keeping our margin of error under 3%. And we ask short surveys because average people do not take long surveys. They have a life. They have stuff to do. They don't have 25 minutes. They don't have 15 minutes to answer 25 questions on a Tuesday night. That's ridiculous. And that's the polling orthodoxy says you have to do it that way. And that's why they were all wrong again.
So if I were to ask you what is the demographic breakdown of Trump's voters, what would you say? How has America voted? Which sections have voted for Trump, and how did he turn the tables?
Well, first of all, there were a lot of people who kept saying what Trump needed to do was focus on the suburban women that, let's say, were Nikki Haley voters, suburban women who did not like Trump on a personal level. And what was done there is, instead of spending a huge amount of resources on that, they knew there were some of those that they could get just on the border and economy. But when a person just doesn't like him, they're not going to start liking him. And when they're voting on that dislike, they won't. So he went directly at Kamala Harris's coalitions. When you make a candidate that is used to getting 70% of the Hispanic vote get 60% of the Hispanic vote, a person, a party that's used to getting 85 to 90% of the black vote get 75% of the black vote, or 80% of the black. And then the youth vote. The Republicans lost the youth vote by 25 points in the past, and this year it's going to be under 10. So by going after all these different groups that are part of the Democrat coalition, he made up that ground that he would either lose to some of the suburban women who didn't like him or some of the seniors, because a lot of the older seniors have passed away, and so the senior vote is getting more and more to the left than it was in the past. So he has to replace those voters.
Well, Robert Cahaly, wonderful speaking with you, and many congratulations. In a season where many pollsters are being panned because they don't get it right, you've got it right, third time running, and many congratulations to you for doing that. And well, America has a new president. We're waiting for the changes the world is going to be looking at in the next
absolutely.
Weeks and months. Thank you very much for joining me on this broadcast. Indians looking at you. Maybe you can fly down to India and begin to foretell some of the Indian elections as well.
Well, we do some international work, so we'd love to do that.
Fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you in India, predicting elections for us. Our pollsters have had a bad time recently. So we're looking for the American Trafalgar group, coming down and probably setting right the signs of, foretelling elections. Thank you very much, Robert, for joining. With that,
yes, have a great day.
You too. Back to you, Deepthi, in the studios to take us and our viewers through that. Some pollsters do get it right, and let's not write off the art and the science of predicting polls. Well, we're looking at scientifically what can we do to improve these projections back home.
Absolutely. Navika, thank you so much for that very interesting conversation between you and Robert. And like Navika said, there are some people who still get it right, pun intended. We quickly hit